Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the Pokemon Adventures Podcast, the short from the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. I am your host, Professor Chris G, and today we are going over Chapter 9, everybody. And the chapter is titled, But Fearow Itself. Now, this is going to be a pretty fun episode because this is where we meet Bill. And Bill, according to the English version, I found out he speaks normal in the Japanese annotation, but he has a southern accent, which I will try my best to kind of give that accent its fair justice here in the Pokemon Adventures. But I will try my best. But like I try to in every single podcast, we're going to give a review. We're going to kind of recap what happened in last week's episode. Last week's episode, we saw Red and Misty finally make their way to Cerulean City. Misty was revealed to be the Cerulean City gym leader. Red kind of made Misty upset because Misty wanted to train for Team Rocket. Red doesn't think that he needed to. He says brute strength will get him through anything. Misty kind of made a little typhoon in his room. And they ended up, at the end of the day, kind of shaking hands and going, okay, fine, I will train with you. We jump forward and we see that that Red has been given the Cascade badge. I guess he ended up having a Pokemon battle. It was kind of disappointing that we didn't get to really see this battle. I really hope that Misty did not just give him this badge, but we end the chapter with Red saying goodbye. I guess they did their training, and after a few days, he won that badge. And then we jump to the next panel, and this is how we ended the episode. We see Bill, and if you remember him from the Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green version, Bill is he owns the Pokemon transporter machine. And this is what we start off with. And Bill's like, dang it, the thing's gone kablooey again. And he kind of crawls into this little machine, and we get the sound effect with the door opening. He's like, this here Pokemon transporter don't run no better than a Metapod on molasses. He's like, fixing this just gonna be big old pain in the... And then all of a sudden his shirt gets caught on the door, closing it behind him. And he's like, oh, double dang. And then something, he had an auto timer. And there was a wild Rattata that ran into the other machine. And he's like, oh no, no. And he's banging on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Let me out. Let me out. And that is where we ended that chapter. And now we are on chapter 9. But Fearow Itself. And we start and we find out that Red is on Route 24. And he's like, man, got so many Pokeballs, I can't carry all of these. And then we get a flashback to what looks like Red has been capturing a whole bunch of Pokemon. And we find out one of them was a Bellsprout. And he's like, but I worked so hard to catch them all. I can't just leave them behind because they're... And then we get a ... And then he drops a Pokeball and he goes to pick it up. He's like, so heavy. And then we hear a phew right behind a log. And Red's like, huh? And then he looks over and he's like, that's a Rattata. I think. And then we get a picture of a Rattata with Bill's head. So it's literally Bill's head on top of a Rattata's body. And Red's like, but something's not right about that. And then he's like, it's got to be a new kind of Pokemon. All right. And he starts creeping behind Rattata. And we get Bill going, owie. Who'd have thunk it'd be so hard just to light a fire? So he was trying to light a fire with that log that he was zipping around. And Red's like, huh? And then Bill's like, heck, if I was human, I'd pick this old stick up just like it was a stick. And Red's like, Pokemon that talks? And he kind of scurries back, and Bill turns around and he's like, huh? He's like, hot dang, a human being. And I'm going to try my best to do this southern accent. He's like, I was starting to think nobody comes mosing around her. And Red's like, and then Bill's like, but praise be. Come on, young fella, lend me a hand. And Red's like, but, and Bill's like, what is it, boy? Something scare you? And he's like, well, all may look just like a mutated Rattata, but I'll have you know I'm a Pokemon expert. And then we see in the background a picture of a bird getting ready to swoop down, and it's like blink. He's like, name's Bill, and this here's see cot. And he was about to say his cottage, but we got Fearow that just comes swooping right down, just whoosh. And Red's like, huh? He's like, well, don't just stand there, boy. Because Red notices that Fearow came right down, grabbed Rattata, and went to go fly away. And Bill's like, well, are you gonna help me? And Red's like, right. He needs help. And then we get him, Poliwhirl, Bulbasaur, and Pikachu running after him. And he's like, hey, wait up. And Red is like, first I gotta stop the Fearow. Bulbasaur, Razor Leaf. And then we see the Razor Leaf coming by, and it's almost hitting Bill straight in the face. And Bill's like, what kind of lame attack is that? He's like, now listen, boy. If you want to stop a flying Pokemon, first thing you do is paralyze its wings. And then we have him imagining Pikachu kind of paralyzing a baby Pidgey. And Bill's like, what do you think some grass Pokemon will do for you? You got two you can use, so use them. And Red's like, if it'll shut you up, Poliwhirl, Ice Beam, Pikachu, Thunder Wave. And Pikachu and Poliwhirl go jumping into the frame, but their attacks end up hitting Bill straight in the face, and Fearow is unfazed. And Bill's like, ew! And Red goes, oops. Bill's like, what are you shooting at? What are you shooting at me for? Game. I'm sorry, everybody. He's like, you trying to fry me? And Red is getting just so irritated. And Bill's like, don't even try while the thing's flying. And he's like, just wait until it stops. And Red's like, you think I can keep up with? And he's like, wait a minute. And then Fearow goes flying into some trees as Red, Pikachu, Poliwhirl, and Bulbasaur are chasing after it. And Red grabs his Pikachu and just chucks his Pikachu straight into the air. He's like, Pikachu, go! And Pikachu goes flying into the air. And we get a couple frames of Pikachu just going higher and higher and higher. And Bill's like, what in the... And Red's like, if you miss from below, try from above. And he's like, and Bill's like, why do you want to fry me so bad? And Pikachu goes, chill. And we get a frame of Fearow just getting fried. And Bill is then let go from Fearow and starts flying in the air. And Red's like, gotcha. And Bill's flying towards the ground. And then all of a sudden, right in front of Red, Fearow goes boom, right in front of him. And Red's like, whoa. And Fearow's all fried. And Red's like, so not a lot of fighting in you now, is there? And Fearow kind of gets annoyed and hears him. And then Fearow gets right up after getting fried by Pikachu. And it's like, huh. And it swoops its wings. And Red's like, oh no. And then we jump over to where Bill landed. And Bill landed on top of a rock. And he's like, ow. And then he looks down and he sees Red, Poliwhirl, Pikachu, and Bulbasaur in the getting ready to battle this here Fearow. And Fearow starts to stand up. And he's like, oh, I know that stance. Bill goes. And Bill's like, hey, boy, better watch out for the drill peck. And Red's like, huh? And Fearow starts going right in for a drill peck. And we get another frame and we see Poliwhirl just standing right there. And Red is all determined. And he's like, I got this. And then we get a really, really awkward scene where it looks like Fearow tried to stab its beak right through the center of Poliwhirl. And Bill is looking up and he turns his head and then he opens one eye. He's like, did it really just pierce that Poliwhirl? And then we go to the next frame and we find out that Poliwhirl used double team. And in this double team, as soon as Poliwhirl, the fake Poliwhirl got stabbed in the stomach by the drill peck, his beak got frozen. And Fearow's like, oh no. And then all of a sudden, the whole body got frozen. And Fearow just drops straight to the ground. And Red's like, phew. And Bill's sitting there. He's like, don't tell me you planned that. And Red just laughs. He's like, it helped to know what attack was coming next. Thanks, man. And he's like, anytime, boy. Anytime. And then we go straight from that. And it looks like we're headed back over to Bill's cottage. And we're inside. And Red is using the lever and pulling it down on the inside of that transporter machine that we saw at the beginning of this episode. And from there, Bill walks out. He opens the door. He's like, hot diggity dog. No chance I could have got back to normal by myself. Much obliged, boy. And Red's like, what is this thing? And Bill's like, it's a Pokemon transporter. This here contraption will transport Pokemon or whatever you want anywhere you want it. And Red is like, that is so cool. And Bill's like, still got a few bugs to work out though. Like if you got a Rattata in one cylinder and it stops working and then you fall into the other cylinder and Red's like, so that's what happened. But Bill turns around and he's like, well, You get the picture. Like I said, the name's Bill. And Red's like, I'm Red, and I'm on a mission to become the greatest Pokemon trainer who ever lived. And Bill's like, a boy with a mission. That's what I like to see. Tell you what, boy, I'm gonna help you. I ain't a Pokemon expert for nothing, you know. We gotta lighten your load. And he takes a look over at Red's belt. And Red's belt has a bunch of Pokeballs on it. He's like, I'll take these. And he snatches some Pokeballs he snatches a Pokeball off of Red's belt. And Red's like, hey. And Bill's like, now, with my transporter, I can shoot these to you instantly wherever you happen to. Huh? And he takes a look at the inside of the Pokeball, and Red has caught Fearow. And it scares the mess out of Bill, and Bill drops to the ground and throws the Pokeball in the air, and he's like, a Fearow! So he must be scarred for life after getting carried by that Fearow. And then we jump to the next panel, and it looks like Red is now on the outside of Bill's cottage, and he's already started walking away. So this must be a little while later, because it looks like him, Pikachu, Poliwhirl, and Bulbasaur have started walking again. He's like, man, what a day! And he looks down at his Pokemon. He's like, you look happy to be out of your Pokeballs. And then in the next panel, we see Red looking out at the ocean. And he's like, whoa, look at that. Check out the humongous swimming pool over there. And Poliwhirl and Bulbasaur are just looking. They're like, oh, wow, look at all that water. And Red's like, kidding, guys. That there is what we call the ocean. And then he looks a little further and he's like, hey, what a cool looking ship. And in the next panel, we see that the ship is called the SS Anne. And you all know where that is leading to if you've played the red, blue, and green version. And Red starts chasing after the boat. He's like, let's check it out. And then that's where we end this week's episode, everybody. And the next episode is Chapter 10, titled Danger High Voltorb. So, this was a really good episode, everybody. I thoroughly enjoyed this. We got to see Bill. I hope I didn't butcher Bill too much. I mean, I'm sorry if I stuttered a little through it. It's hard reading the way that they wrote out Bill's words. Like I said, he does not sound like that in the Japanese version. I can't wait to do that version for you, because it's a completely different version of Bill. But Red is getting ready to go on to the SS Anne, everybody. So what trouble is Red about to get into there? But it's that time, everybody, for all the plugs in this week's episode. Make sure you follow us at PokeBreakdown on Twitter. At this point, if you are listening to this episode on the free feed, the entire first volume and part of the second volume is already out there for you to listen to on the Patreon. Go ahead and go on patreon.com/everypokemon and subscribe to one of our many tiers that we have. We have a manga only section for only $5, everybody. If you want to listen to only the manga, or for just a little bit more, you can get the Pokemon episodes that I do with Doug, our main weekly podcast, along with the movies. So make sure you go on Patreon and you go and subscribe. But other than that, everybody, I want to thank you for downloading this episode. I hope you guys are really enjoying these Pokemon Adventure shorts. And we will end up getting together next week for another brand new episode of the Pokemon Adventures podcast, a short from the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast that I do with good old Dougie Fresh. My name is Professor Chris G, and I am signing out, and I will see you again next week, everybody. Have a good night.